Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Angela Gilmore, and I am the Interim Dean of the University of the District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law, one of the United States' leading clinical law schools. I am delighted to welcome you to the first episode of the sixth season of our Conversations with Clinicians series. For those who are tuning in for the first time, you can find previous episodes on our website. A link is also provided in the chat. The mission of the David A. Clark School of Law at the University of the District of Columbia is to prepare a diverse and future generation of lawyers to practice law, promote justice, and change lives by providing high quality legal services to underserved DC residents and empowering students from marginalized and underrepresented communities to enter the legal profession. Conversations with Clinicians features UDC law faculty and conversation with leaders in clinical and experiential legal education. We created this series to provide a space for clinicians across the country and this season across the world to engage with one another on topics of shared interest and to explore some of the most pressing issues facing clinical legal education today. Moderating this discussion is Annie Schäufele, co-director of the UDC Law Immigration and Human Rights Clinic. Annie will introduce our esteemed guests for this conversation. We will begin today's session with cameras off, and we will invite you to join us on screen during the Q&A portion of the program. Professor Schäufele.
Good morning, buenos dias, guten Abend, buona sera for those in Italy joining us at the end of their work day. Whether you're here live or listening into the recording, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our speakers. This conversation, as Dean Gilmore mentioned, is part of a series on international perspectives on clinical legal education. Our guests today are Dr. Salvador Guerrero Navarro, Director of the Alaide FOPA Legal Clinic for Refugees at the Iberoamericana University in Mexico City, Mexico, and Uli Stiege, Director of the IUC Clinical Legal Education Program at the International University College of Torino in Torino, Italy, and co-president of the Global Advocates for Justice Education, or GAGE. Serving as interpreter for Dr. Guerrero Navarro's remarks today is Jocelyn Hernandez, a 3L at UDC Law. So like the US, Italy, and Mexico are deeply shaped by migration, and we'd like to explore in our questions how these national contexts influence how the clinicians design their programs, what they teach their students, how they understand the role of clinical education in responding to human mobility. We plan to have time for questions at the end, and we'll invite you to put your questions in the chat or to unmute and ask them live at the end. So first of all, to get us started in the conversation, I'd like to ask about your clinic design. So could you briefly describe your clinic? Who do you serve? How it's structured? How students are involved? And I'll ask in Spanish as well. ¿Podría describir brevemente su clínica? ¿A quién entiende? ¿Cómo está estructurada? ¿Y cómo participen los estudiantes? And I defer to you all who would like to answer first.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. And I asked for a translator for this presentation, so I will to prepare this in Spanish. Bueno, la clínica jurídica Alaide FOPA es una clínica que se constituyó por un acuerdo entre la Universidad de Ibero y el Alto Comisionado de Naciones Unidas para los Refugiados, ACNUR. Y nosotros damos atención legal a personas refugiadas de manera gratuita. Durante los últimos 10 años ha habido mucha transformación dentro de la universidad y actualmente tenemos 8 clínicas jurídicas dentro de la Ibero con diferentes temas. eh, y ahora tenemos un aproximado de 80 estudiantes de todas las clínicas que atienden muchos tipos de casos.
Okay. Um, so the clinic was created as an agreement between the university and another organization for refugees. It offers free consultation and it works with the refugees for free. And there's 8 clinics within the university, and there's about 80 students in total that are working within those clinics and obviously deal with like different matters.
Bueno, y la clínica tiene varias formas en cómo los estudiantes se involucran. Hay una clase que es obligatoria para todos los estudiantes de derecho y a partir de esa clínica se eh, obtienen créditos universitarios. Pero también hay una forma que es el servicio social, en donde estudiantes antes de graduarse tienen que tener una participación en una organización y la clínica es una organización donde pueden hacer este servicio a la comunidad, que incluye la atención directa, ¿no? De personas refugiadas y que además nuestros estudiantes no solo son de derecho, sino son de otras áreas, por ejemplo, de relaciones internacionales o de ciencia política dentro de la universidad.
Okay, and in terms for how the students are involved, there's a mandatory class that they have to take that involves clinic, but then, and they also receive obviously credit for the university, but there's also this social service requirement. And one way that students are able to fulfill that is by working again with clinics because that is able to offer them the opportunity to do community service. But also some of those clinics involve like international studies and political science as well.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
De nada.
All right, Uli.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you very much for this invitation and also opening up, if I understand it well, to the international audience, your clinical talk series, which I think is a very, very nice idea. And thank you also to putting the topic of immigration law clinics on the top as well, because I think that's at the moment for us at least a topic which a lot of clinics are involved in, because the challenges which are sort of transcribed in this kind of clinics are crucial, let's say, legal challenges that somehow also describes very well how our societies works and not works in a way. So I think it's a very interesting learning aspect for all law students or future lawyers in a way. So thank you for this. Our clinic has been created now, around 15 years ago as one of the first law clinics in Italy, together with 2 other clinics in Brescia and in Rome. We have started to design it from the very start as part of a cooperation. The cooperation between 3 universities in the local area of Turin. First of all, our International University College students, who are all international master students. Then also involving Italian students coming from the University of Turin and the University of Eastern Piedmont, which is a close by city in Alexandria from Turin. And that means in the last years we have been able to involve a very interesting squad of international students, so around more than 350 students coming from more than 55 countries. So it's quite diverse. Students are really coming themselves in a way from a migration background. Which creates a sort of interesting, also international group of people that are working on international migration issues as well. So that's great in specific character, so to speak, for the clinic. Our clinic is also has three kind of components, a little bit similar to what has been described already. There's a preparation part, which all students involved in the clinic need to take part of. It's usually a period of 2.5 months. And then there will be the practitioner or the practical activity parts, which I can explain a little bit more. There are different sort of practical activities we offer. And then inside of the practical activities part, there is the, we call them the supervision or reflection part, which are regular meetings during the practical activities, where we all come together as students involved in the different practical activities and then reflect about what's going wrong in our legal practice and what could be improved maybe or something like this. And the idea is really to create a sort of, with the students, a group of students and the professors and the lawyers as supervisors involved as a kind of a community of practice, how we call them, that really wants to look at the different challenges that around the topic of migration. We also involve some multidisciplinary activities. So we have, first of all, not only law students, we also have, as my colleague from Mexico as well, students from different disciplines, political science, economy, also anthropology. And we introduce some elements of arts inside the clinic as well. So there's some courses specifically targeting the arts meets migration and asylum law, so to speak, where we bring in migrant artists to be the actor instead of being the receiver of services, and creating as such a wider community also with the clients, so to speak. So it's an interesting sort of way to create a better community in a way. In terms of activities, we are having a cooperation with an asylum or refugee community NGO, which provides social support for refugees and migrants in the local area of Turin. And so we cooperate with them and providing a legal support desk, an open legal support desk. So we covering the sort of administrative and legal support, while the, let's say, more social support is provided by the NGO. And so this is an open desk which is open twice a week, and students are running this desk together with at least one supervising lawyer. And then we have activities with specific targeting some communities, like victims of human trafficking, like specific work on statelessness, so clients who are statelessness. We have cooperation with local PRISM. If an asylum seeker wants to ask, or a migrant wants to ask asylum inside of PRISM, they can reach out to us and we can have facilitating this process, which absurdly is not working otherwise. And then and then we have two other categories activities which are a little bit different. One is more a strategic litigation activity where we involve some group of students in appeals in front of the European Court of Human Rights or the African Court of Human Rights. And then so-called more advocacy activity where we do clinical research projects, specifically in Turin on the immigration detention center. Just some examples. Yeah, I think that I keep it as far from there.
Yeah. This is all just fascinating for us to learn. And I think both of your clinics, right, are responding to the migration realities in your respective cities. And so for us to better understand those, my question to you, a bit of a combo, is both, what are those local immigration realities in Torino or Mexico City that influenced your clinic design? And also, how have those realities changed over the past few years? Entonces, ¿qué realidades migratorias locales en Torino, en la Ciudad de México, han influido el diseño de la clínica? Y ahorita en los últimos años, ¿cómo ha cambiado el trabajo respondiendo a las nuevas realidades? And so I'll start with you, Salvador. Podemos empezar contigo.
Eh, Creo que lo que ha ocurrido en la Ciudad de México es igual que en muchos lugares del mundo, que esto cambia muy rápido y que las necesidades van siendo mayores para las personas. Eh, as- la clínica tiene 10 años de existencia y al principio se veían sobre todo casos de personas que huían de su país y, y había una comunidad en México, principalmente personas de Centroamérica y de Sudamérica. Sin embargo, con los años ha habido un cambio muy importante en el tipo de flujos migratorios que van llegando. Por ejemplo, en algún momento teníamos muchos casos de internamiento por aeropuerto, pero eso cambió hace unos años cuando México, por presión de los Estados Unidos, ahora ha solicitado visa a prácticamente todos los países de Sudamérica eh, y Centroamérica. Entonces esto ha hecho que ya casi no haya casos de personas que intenten llegar a México por un aeropuerto, sino que más bien son personas que ahora llegan vía terrestre. Y esto cambia mucho las estrategias jurídicas que vamos implementando en cada caso. Eh, Antes éramos muy reactivos para que las personas tenían 4 horas para, digamos, para que no fueran expulsadas, y ahora las personas son detenidas durante tiempos muy prolongados en el sur del país. También nosotros hemos cambiado también algunas estrategias, sobre todo porque muchas personas antes usaban a México como país de tránsito, que no querían quedarse en México, sino llegar hacia los Estados Unidos. Y también ellos tenían muchas necesidades, como también me parece similar a lo que dice Ulrich, que pasa en Turín, ¿no? Que tiene muchas necesidades, no solamente jurídicas, sino de salud, de educación, de atenciones. Y en los últimos años hemos visto un aumento de personas que son regresadas de los Estados Unidos, muchas personas mexicanas también de Estados Unidos, que pues tienen necesidad de obtener algún tipo de documento de identidad, y muchas personas están siendo, nosotros llamamos, de utilizar a México como un destino forzado para la migración. Em, y eso, respondiendo a tu pregunta, eh, involucra muchos tipos de estrategias, muchos tipos de autoridades y estrategias jurídicas más complejas y más completas para las personas que ahora se encuentran en México. Es un poco todo el contexto detrás detrás del contexto migratorio en México y lo que hacemos en la clínica.
Okay. So the first part that Salvador talked about is Mexico City, how it's very much the same as everywhere else, and that there's always a lot of change, and that change leads to a lot of changes in circumstances for people. At the start, people were leaving their countries, mainly from like Central and South America. And they were doing that before by airport, so they were just flying into Mexico. Now that has changed a lot because one of the policy changes in Mexico is that it now requires a visa. So people weren't able to do that anymore, and had to kind of like transition to other forms of transportation. In terms of strategies, people use Mexico a lot as a form of transit. So like we're not going to stay forever in Mexico. It's just kind of like a stopping point in our migration process. Um, and that has obviously changed, especially an increase in people being kind of like sent back from the US. And now they're in Mexico trying to get some form of like identification. So in that sense, Mexico is a forced destination for these migration proceedings. And that also involves a lot of authority that needs to get involved and a lot of strategic planning that Mexico has to also kind of like go through in order to make sure that these processes are like as smooth as they can be.
So just picking up on that, and Uli, I'd love to hear too about the context in Torino, and if you can speak to, you mentioned serving some asylum seekers in prison, but I'm assuming that's unrelated to their ongoing immigration case that they might be in prison for some other criminal matter. But I'd love to hear about kind of the detained context as we draw comparisons between our realities.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, first of all, I think maybe just to picture a little bit the changes that have happened in the past. So Italy was traditionally an emigration country, not an immigration country. So Italians went away instead of immigrants came to Italy. This changed this picture, not so far away. So this is something that has happened in the last, particularly in the last 20 years, so to speak. When we started in the beginning of the clinic, so 15 years ago, asylum was not a hot topic. Italy was not a classical asylum country where asylum seekers would seek for protection. This changed after the Arab Spring dramatically, and the Libyan crisis, but also the war in Syria. And that changed completely the picture for us as well. So while in the very beginning, asylum was really a small portion of the clinical activities, we had actually much more at those times worked on detention and classical immigration cases. We then shifted almost fully, not fully, but at least for a good part of our activities to asylum procedures, asylum applications, and all this kind of stuff. One thing is, which is important to mention, is that we don't represent clients in front of court. Why is this? Because first of all, there is a limitation for us. Clinical students cannot represent in front of a judge. We don't have this so-called students rule that you have in the US, where students can appear in front of the judge and also take actions. So we are limited in the sense, but and the second sort of reason is that we do have a quite good legal aid system. So lawyers in front of a court can be paid by the state out by legal aid if the person has not enough meanings to pay for a lawyer. That makes it a full market. And if you do have a lot of immigration lawyers operating, and this is the case in Turin, you don't need necessarily to step in with the clinic and to serve preparing appeal, so to speak. So what we did is we searched for these sort of loopholes in the system where no legal support is provided. And that's why it comes up with asylum, for example. We do classically the preparation for the asylum interview, where no real legal support is provided, or looking for statelessness, where basically no lawyer or limited lawyers are around providing support, or victims of human trafficking. So we look for these kind of loopholes to work with. And we also looked at detention, as we have in Turin, in the middle of the city, by the way, an immigration detention center. So this was one of the first activities we had, and we run it through different times. The problem is we are not representing or working with individual clients, because that's very hard to get hold of them once they are inside, and also because there are lawyers that are appointed for their support. Each person has usually appointed either a private lawyer that they have appointed to, or a official nominated lawyer. So we are not intervening in this sort of fields, but we have started to work on overseeing the entire conditions, have made report about the horrible conditions that are in detention centers. Made also evident that, for example, there were a link between detention, so criminal detention, and immigration detention. So most of the time, you finish your sentence in a criminal prison, let's say criminal detention in prison, and you lose your documents because you may had a job and then you lost your job and you cannot renew your permit to stay, and so you lose your permit, and then you automatically, instead of being freed up, you are actually brought to the immigration detention center because you became irregular during the detention, so the prison, so to speak. And this is a real issue. And so we tried to work on the different legal procedures and highlight. I could talk more about this because it's quite interesting work that has been done to highlight the human rights problematics that are linked to the, let's say, traditional review of immigration detention. So there's a judge which is called the judge of the peace, which is designed to review the detention order. And this is a very problematic figure in our legal system. So we worked on those kind of issues also together with other clinics to make some awareness about this problematic. So what I can tell you, the situation in our detention centers are traumatic in the sense that we have usually also self-harm very much presented, problems of even persons who take their lives inside of these detention centers. We just had a ruling yesterday, sorry. The director of the detention center has been sentenced to 1.5 years prison for a person who took his life, and so the responsibility of the detention centers, which is a private structure, it's in our system. The director has been criminal charged, so there's a criminal responsibility for this person. So there are good signs, but at the same time, so at least this was a little success in all this mess that we also having on immigration detention centers.
And with so much need, and as clinicians, we're just pulled in so many different directions. So I wonder if you can speak to what kinds of cases you're working on now, and if you have an example of a case that's sort of demonstrative of the different areas that you have highlighted. And I'll start with you, Uli, and then I'll turn to Salvador just to switch it up.
Yes, thank you. So I may highlight maybe two, if I can. One is it's interesting because we're very much working on statelessness. We have a project which is actually a combined clinical project with two universities, Roma 3 and Roma 3 and Naples. It is a project which is also supported by UNHCR, which is specifically targeting statelessness persons. And we have also, because we had Palestinian students, we have focused in the last years, 1.5, 2 years, basically on statelessness applications of Palestinian not refugees, because they are considered sort of refugees, but most of the time they don't have any nationality because they're born maybe in Lebanon in one of those refugee camps and have never been accepted any kind of let's say nationality, and coming then here maybe by a student's visa or coming through other kind of means, they are kept in a limbo, in a real legal limbo, and it is, it's strange to say, but it's the statelessness application, which is taking a year more or less to get the statelessness protection, but it's a sort of application to the court, is not that complicated for those Palestinian persons. It's demanded a little bit of a groundwork, but once we had this sort of groundwork started, we now know we have a sort of kit of documents that we need to gather, and then the story to be defined. But then we can use the legal work basically as a copy-paste work, so to speak. It's not, it's not entirely copy-paste, obviously, but there is a lot of it. Let's say there's a model that has been developed, and we are using and serving more and more Palestinians at the moment to get their statelessness protection. So that's one case, which specifically in this moment is very important because usually they have really a hardship to go back in any way to Palestine, whether it's Gaza or West Bank or Lebanon or wherever. So that's one part. The other part I want to highlight is a little bit. It's related to more the strategic litigation activity we are doing, because given that also we have a number of African students in our clinical teams, and the externalization problematic that is very much present to us, Libya, Tunisia, is a very important work also in terms of sensibilization. And so we started to work on African court cases against Tunisia. So we had some clients that we presented. They're now here, but they passed through this kind of very hardship in terms of Tunisian somehow being asked by Tunisian authorities, somehow being asked by European authorities to bring migrants back to the desert and leave them there. This kind of hardship, we're trying to sort of highlight them with clients that made it to Italy. And so we are presenting at the moment cases to the African Court of Human Rights. So anyway, I'm just highlighting this because I think it's a little bit, it's not the classical work we usually do in terms of classical legal help desk work, which is, asylum, immigration, whatever, but it's something which is a little bit extraordinary, but it's very important in my mind because it challenge with some specific strategic problematic that exists in our European migration framework.
Yeah, if we had more time, I would really love to dig into this statelessness status of Palestinians in Italy, because we have a different system or a different sort of way that they are being processed here. And so it's just an interesting from the legal perspective. But turning back to the clinics and turning to you, Salvador, sabemos que hay tanta necesidad en la comunidad, y en estos momentos, ¿cómo han decidido en qué casos están enfocándose ahorita? Y si nos puede dar, compartir un ejemplo de un caso o unos casos que brindan una experiencia de aprendizaje para sus alumnos. Gracias.
Thank you. Let me try to answer this in English. If it doesn't work, I try to change it. Let me explain how is the involved of the cases with the students. We try to go to a one shelter very near to the university to have this talk that we know as know your rights with the people in shelters, and we have two talks, one at the beginning of the semester and another at the end. And the first talk with the lawyers, we give the information, we try to get the interviews with the people in shelters. And the second talk is with the students. The students prepare this information, prepare the interviews, and the students get the follow-up of the cases. And uh, the last year we attend like 1,000 people in Mexico with the office, and we have 100 cases in the court, before the court, um, or in different kind of cases like administrative trials or constitutional trials. Here in Mexico, we can take these cases because they don't need a present lawyer in each case, because it, it's different from the US, because in US we have these trials with there is an oral procedure um, before a judge, but in Mexico the most of the cases is in administrative trials, and is most of the processes is writing, so it's very easy to handle this in the clinic. And the very few cases are the hardest cases that we are very involved to have this structural litigation, that we try to change the interpretation of the law. We try to change some practices from the authority, and this is the most difficult thing in the clinic. Um, I, I want to tell you about two or three cases that um, very structural cases. One, I think, is one of the most interesting cases. We the last I don't remember, it was the last or two years ago. We bring the one family from the Gaza Strip. Um, in a process from unity familiar unity here in Mexico. One people from Palestine was um, asylum seeker here in Mexico. He won the cases a long time ago, and he tried to bring all the family from the Gaza Strip to Mexico. But the family was very large family, and here in Mexico the law doesn't have this possibility, because the family in the Mexico law is very short. Only the fathers and daughters, and we try to change the interpretation of the law, and at the end, the authority allowed to bring, I think, 13 persons from the family, and well, we won this part, and also after that was a very, I think, like a international mission that involved the UN, the United Nations, and the and the Mexican government, because all the embassies in Jordania, in Egypt, in Lebanon participate in the evacuation of the family, and was very stressful here, because we don't know some things, and one after one another hour was very stressful to try to see if the family could get out from the gas strip. And well, we won the cases. The family after that they went to Mexico, and well, I think was one of the best shots from the clinic. And well, and this is a very strange case. This was a lot of um, um, organizations before this case. Was a lot of um, journalists and press that they help us to get this pressure to the government, also to the Israel government, and was very difficult. But well, that was, I think, the best cases. This is the one thing that I wanted to share with you is how students get involved in this case. One thing was in the legal matter. In the legal matter, they involve and have a lot of research, and then um, they develop these writing skills, and also legal skills. But another thing very important was the the perception of the conflict in the Middle East. As different, for example, in the U.S., I think that there's very political this matter. I think the conflict in the Gaza Strip in Mexico, I think, is not a very political, and students they don't really get involved in this conflict. So we saw the participation in the case was very helpful to get involved and get political involved, and try to explain what happened in the Gaza Strip. So we are very um, satisfied with this process, and not only for the legal part, so for the political part. And well, this is one that we have a lot of another cases, but we I try to in another participations here.
This is all just really inspiring and fascinating work. And I have more questions, of course, but I want to open up for the audience to have a chance to ask questions. If we had had more time, and if the audience is interested, we were curious about the use of artificial intelligence, about grading in clinics, about the emotional dimensions. So if folks are inspired to ask a question in those areas or any others that have been touched on by Uli and Salvador, please feel free to either add them in the chat or to request to be unmuted, and you can ask live. Yes, so Landrum, can you please unmute Elaye Garabi? Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the noise if you cannot hear me clearly. Thank you for this super informative sessions. It was very inspiring to me that be around people who have the same concerns. I just want to share that I have the experience of working in legal clinic for around 8 years in Iran. In that area in Iran, we didn't have focus on immigration. The immigration that I worked for was a university-based legal clinic, and we dedicated our jobs to family laws. So in that legal clinic, I worked for child custody, domestic violence, and such things. And I worked from being an intake specialist to be the director manager. And when I come to the US, I just came here in 2024 to pursue my education at Penn State Law. And when I graduated and I see how immigration is important in the United States as an immigrant and also for other nationalities, I decided to work in immigration law. And I had a fellowship in Florida for immigration law, and I see that it's very helpful that you have immigration law experience and legal clinic experience. So when I see that people are talking about El Salvador, I worked for preparing a country condition for El Salvador, and it was so inspiring. Some of my colleagues work in Mexico, and when I see that you're sharing experience about Mexico, it's just so inspiring. And I want to say that I'm very open to any collaboration with our lovely colleagues here. If you need my help or guidance or collaboration, I'm very open to it. I'm very ready for it because I have clinical um, experience and at the same time immigration law experience right now I'm in Florida, United States. I'm happy to help, more than happy to help. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your offerings of collaboration. And I know, Salvador, in your clinic, you have created some connections, some collaborations with law school clinics here in the US. And so we're always looking for those connections to be made. Other questions for our guests?
Thank you so much.
Thanks. So Brad Jessup, I can read off your question or you can unmute.
I'm happy for you to read, Anne.
All right. So Professor Jessup is a clinician at Melbourne Law School and is curious about referred trauma and the emotional toll on and care for students in your clinic. And so en español, entonces se interesa mucho en la dimensión del impacto emocional a los alumnos, a los estudiantes, y le gustaría saber cómo cuida a los alumnos acerca de eso.
I try to answer this. I think this is a very important thing. We are in the university. I think that the first time that we had this question was in the pandemic, where we don't have this face to face to the students, so we don't know what happened in their in the interactions, and unfortunately we have a special agreement with a psychological clinic in the university, so the students, they have a special need for the mental health. They could pass for free with with a special a psychology in the university. But also we try to get one or two sessions in semester with a psychology. They explain the first sites for psychologies, and also we have another sessions for trauma for people and also for the defenders. And in this semester we hire a psychologist is specialized in refugee, and we try to get this for the students and also for people that we attend. It's really hard because, as you know, we are in a crisis for the funds in the humanitarian sector, and we don't have enough funds for all the services we provide. But well, I think if we have these spaces with people and also with the students.
I can maybe quickly follow up. I think it's a very important issue, which needs, I think, even more attention that we provide. But what we try to do is a little bit what Salvatore also explained already. So we have some sessions about trauma and well-being of the clients, but also the students. This has been based on a cooperation we have with a psychologist and ethno psychiatrist who is one of the founders of a ethnopsychology center in Turin, which is called the Centro Fanon. It's a center specifically working on ethnopsychologist problematics. So they are training students that are part of the training, but also because students of them, because there was also a professor, he was also a professor at the University of Turin. The students of them also joined the clinic as anthropology students, for example. So that was very interesting to get the sort of supervision work together with a person who has also is always very important for us. One thing which I think it's difficult sometimes is to get to know whether students have problems in a way to overcome these emotions. And I see here Susan Brooks, who yeah, somehow taught us as well about reflective practice. And reflective practice is something that we are doing since almost 10 years now. Is something which has been very useful to do so. So letting students after each kind of client contact in a way write about also their emotions, which is part of this reflective practice, was very helpful to understand what kind of problems maybe they are facing, and then helped us also to address them specifically in supervision meetings. So this is a tool, in my view, was extremely helpful to ask students to write about their emotions when they encounter a client interview, for example.
Yeah, and I will just add that at UDC Law, we will have soon an MSW program, a Master of Social Work, and plan to collaborate with that program, recognizing the same, that our students need the support and our clients need the support, and that can come in lots of different forms. And we have actually our last iteration of conversations with clinicians, the last season was all about collaborations between law school clinics and lawyers and social workers. So we welcome you to view those. Do we have another final question from the audience? All right, then I'll ask the AI question. So are you seeing artificial intelligence come into law practice and into law clinic education in your respective countries?
I may start. We did a very interesting session, a conference in Luxembourg last year about AI and legal clinics. And so the attention is here. I must say, at times, I also feel that in some way, some legal documents that are drafted by students are getting better. So I'm not against it. I think it's a useful tool. What we have to pay attention is obviously the fact that control is one of the most, let's say, critical assessment of what is produced and how you use it afterwards is the most fundamental thing that you have to develop now. It's not so much the content of something, or even now, even writing something. It becomes the most crucial item. It's about how critical assess them, how impactful they are they correct? Is everything in line with the law? Can maybe innovation be improved inside of the legal argumentation? All this kind of stuff. I think AI can help us to automatize some processes, and I think here it can help us to have more time for clients interviews, more time for innovations, and trying to find legal arguments which might be more interesting to develop. So in this sense, it's very, very useful, but we have to be also very careful that the algorithm used in AI sometimes are not exactly, so they're sort of, let's say they are challengeable, and they are also manipulative, whatever, you understand. Maybe. So so we have to pay very much attention to it, but we cannot look away from it, in my view. If you would do so, we would not understand how the world is working at the moment. And also we cannot go away from it because otherwise other people will use it in a way that create algorithms, for example, as well, that somehow is not in our line. So I think it's very important to use them in a good way.
Salvador, Dr. Mark.
Yeah, well, I have this. Well, in university, we have a guidelines to the ethical use of the AI, and but I think in law, I think is not very useful yet. Um, I don't. I just think because is the algorithms is not ready yet for this, but I think this gonna be changed in a few months. Uh, but also, I think the the AI, it doesn't be very useful for our students for the kind of work that they make with us, because for example they need to interview people, and and the interview is not well, they doesn't need the AI for the interview, because they need to have these conversations and this uh, effort to the people and try to get information. And I think the AI doesn't work very well for this. I think also for the hardest part, that is to get these the claims or the research in the legal part of the clinic. Um, they are very involved in the case, and I think if they use it, I don't think it's to replay or to get the easy way. I think they use for very specific task, and I think this the AI is not very relevant in right now. Um, but as I said, this could be changed in a very few months. But there's a part that they doesn't need it for the clinic.
Well, thank you for ending us on that note and the preparing for the future, because you're right, it is rapidly changing and it's at our doorstep. And thank you very much, Uli and Salvador, for joining us this afternoon, and for all of those who have tuned in. Please tune in for our future episodes where we bring other clinicians practicing around the world to join a conversation with a UDC law clinician. And happy Valentine's for those who are celebrating tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.